Jen,
Hello, hello.
thank you very much for popping in.
Thank you for having me.
So, how is bowls?
Bowls?
Tell me about bowls.
Bowls. Well, Bowls was great. So we had a fundraising event for Bowls. No, for Voices of Hope, sorry, which was a bowl. Do you know, it's actually funny that I can't even speak about this because at the event on Saturday, I had to do a talk, as you do, because we had to tell them what the whole idea of Voices of Hope was. And I kept saying balls bowling. Was it balls bowling? Or anyway, there was those two words I just couldn't figure out how to say. And I tried to correct myself multiple times, couldn't work it out. Never got there, decided to accept the fact that I wasn't going to be able to say it. But no, Bowls was really good. It was a really great event. We had about 140 people come out for a really fun day in the sun and to bowl some balls.
Bowl some balls.
Yeah.
So that was just a fundraiser.
It was. So there's these guys that are doing something called the Mongolian Rally or the Mongol Rally, and it's from London to, I think it used to be London to Mongolia, but now
In a piece of shit car.
yeah, and it has to be like under $1,000 the car or something. And part of the race rules is that they have to raise, I think it's $1,000 for a charity, but these guys were like, nah, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this properly. And so they've set the goal to raise $50,000 for Voices of Hope, which is awesome for us. We were like, when we first got the message from them, we're like, is this like some sort of joke? Like it just sounded all too good to be true. But they've been really awesome to us. And the event on Saturday, the Bowls was their first sort of fundraiser to get that off the ground. So it was cool.
Sweet.
It was really cool. And the sun was out, so it was perfect.
Yeah, it's been good weather. Not like today.
I know.
Which is shit. That's okay. Surprisingly warm for this time of year.
It is. It actually is really warm. But grey.
So Voices of Hope.
Yes.
What is Voices of Hope and where did it come from?
What is Voices of Hope and where did it come from? So Voices of Hope is something that I started with a friend, co-founded with a friend back in 2014 originally. I was living in the States at the time. She was here. We were connected through a mutual friend, and basically Jazz posted on Facebook one day saying her friend had just taken her life, and I messaged her being like, we need to do something. I'm sick of hearing stories like this. And that's when Voices of Hope began to happen, I guess, so to say. And Jazz and I are both really passionate about, we love creating media content and video content. And so for us, we knew that we wanted to tell people stories in like a visual way. And because we're young and social media is so hip or whatever you want to call it, like it's so prominent, I don't know, we were like, we can use this to our advantage. So long story short, life happened. I was living in the States. Jazz started school, and so we put Voices of Hope on hold with the idea that we would definitely get it back up and running, but we just kind of leaped into it too quickly because the idea was exciting, but then we were like, wait, what have we got ourselves into? So relaunched again at the beginning of 2017. We won a Jetstar grant, and from there things have just kind of taken off and gone here, there and everywhere.
Taken off. See what you did there.
Oh, yeah.
Jetstar, nice work.
Hey, that's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, nailed that. So for us, it's been a really exciting journey. I think both Jazz and I have our own mental health and struggles with mental illness, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And we wanted to create a platform where people could share stories of hope, and so that people watch our videos and see our social media content and read our stories and walk away from it and go, yes, I can actually do this. I'm not alone. And just to kind of get rid of some of that stigma and shame that's attached to it all.
So you're only 24 years old.
I am.
How old's Jazz? About the same age?
Yeah, she's the same age.
Okay, so that's quite young. So if you started this like 4 or 5 years ago, did you say?
I think it was 18.
Young?
Or 19, 18, 19. I think, and looking back, like I said, probably, not that I was necessarily too young, but I didn't really know, or we didn't really know what we were getting ourselves into. We're dealing with people's lives on a daily basis, and it's like a really serious, and you need to be on top of it, and we need to have the right support around us. And so, we jumped into it probably too quickly, but we learned so much from that. And I think if we hadn't done it once, and I was going to say failed, but it wasn't even a failure, then we wouldn't have learned all that we did and be doing what we are today. So, but yeah, little babies, 18.
How hands-on are you with people with mental illness? So
this is something that we're having to really, probably more now than ever, having to kind of create some guidelines and rules around. When we started, we were on a much smaller scale, and originally our vision was to provide hope and help to individuals who are struggling. And after a few discussions, we realized that we can give them help by providing hope, but actually we can't personally help them. That's not our role. We're not clinical professionals. It's dangerous for us to do so. We just weren't the right people to do that. So we kind of reorganize what we actually felt we could do. Jazz and I work with a few individuals or support a few individuals personally, But we're very careful not to get too involved because there's only two of us, and at the end of the day, Jazz and my own mental health needs to be the top priority in our lives. And although we're both very well, and when you're dealing with high crisis people and people that are mentally ill, it can be draining and upsetting. And so for us, we really had to kind of figure out what we're doing, and our videos are so impactful. Our quotes get shared and people tag their friends in it. And so that's that's our role. And it was about finding what our actual role in this is.
Mm-hmm. So looking after your own mental health so you can take care of other people's mental health.
Yes.
Clever.
Yes.
I'll see how that goes.
Yes. Yep.
So what online presence does Voices of Hope have?
It's pretty huge now. So Facebook is kind of, although we have Instagram and a website as well, Facebook's kind of been our platform that we've built Voices of Hope off because it has the ability to share posts. And so our presence online is huge. More recently, our presence offline has also grown. Jazz personally does a lot of public speaking. I'm doing stuff with outside Voices of Hope that still relates to Voices of Hope, but not on the Voices of Hope platform, so to say. But yeah, our main platform is online, and we've got a presence all over the world. We receive messages from Canada and the UK, and you look at our stats on our website and they come from like Zimbabwe and like just the randomest places.
That's cool.
Which is cool. And when you are doing something online, you have the ability to reach so many more people. Which is worked in our favour.
And you met our future king.
We did. That was awesome. So Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, or the Duke and Duchess, we met them down in Wellington, which was real cool. I was actually in Vietnam at the point that we got a email, and Jazz contacted me, and I just didn't believe her on the phone. I was like, you don't expect to wake up and get a call being like, hey, we need to go to Wellington to meet the Duke and Duchess. And anyway, turns out it was real. We did. Awesome.
That's me. How did they find out about what you guys are doing?
Very good question. So the whole tour was based around mental health, youth in particular, and so they were working with the DIA here, is it DIA, the Department of Internal Affairs? Yep. And so they were working with them, and they kind of got a number of organisations that were working either in youth mental health or were youth or like young mental health workers, and wanted to get them in the same room. And so we were just invited. So they obviously heard about us somewhere. And then I'm sure Prince Harry and Meghan didn't know about us until the day, but they turned up, and we actually had a really good chance to chat to them, and it was a really easy conversation, and they were really invested and interested in it. That's
really cool, because I have seen that pretty much all of them, Harry, William, and that they have got quite an interest in mental health.
Yes.
Which is really good. I've seen some of their videos online, and it's brilliant.
Yeah. I think one of the things I remember most from that meeting was Harry said, I think it must have been Harry that said it. He said, mental health, we talked about how mental health doesn't discriminate, and mental illness doesn't discriminate. And he said, we were sitting there with the prince, and even in his family, mental health and mental illness has been an issue. Yeah. And that's why they're so passionate about it. And so it was cool to just be reminded that you can be the prince, or you can be me or you or anyone, and we can all be, affected by it.
You're right, it doesn't discriminate at all. It was weird, I was over in Fiji on a job and got the news that
just casually,
a couple weeks ago. But we got the news that Pua Makaseva had taken his life.
Yes.
And that was like, what? Because I'd worked with him on Shortland Street and some other places, and you just don't know. You know what I mean? You just do know where it was going to come from.
You don't know. And I mean, I look at the pictures of Pua. I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but a lot of the images you see him as a big happy, and the people that I knew him, he was a lovely presence and happy, and you could have no idea. And I walk down the street differently now than I used to before I went through my own crappy time, thinking, that person could be extremely unwell or, wanting to end it, and I would have no idea.
You just don't know. Yeah. You just don't know. So your journey. Yes. Let's talk about your journey. If you're comfortable, where did that come from? Where did it stem from?
Yes. So it's hard to pinpoint exactly the moment that my illness began, but I remember when I talk about it one night walking into the kitchen, and my dad was watching the news, and there was a news piece about a murder that had happened, and some guy had climbed into someone's room and blah blah blah. But I remember seeing that, and it was kind of from that night on, and I'm sure I had anxiety before then, but that I really struggled to sleep alone. I got really freaked out that it was going to happen to me. I felt in constant danger. At the same time, in danger that I was going to be hurt. That what happened in that episode or like that segment was going to happen to me.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we had a couple of neighbours that were getting in trouble with the law and the police, and so I just kind of felt really anxious at night in my home, and then also when I left my home, because these guys were often around hanging on the street, because that's cool apparently. And so for me, anxiety was the kind of the start of it. And over a period of time, I'd spend nights screaming because I was too scared to sleep alone, and my parents tried everything. They moved down to the guest room, which is next to my room. At one point they tried locking their door because I used to sneak in and sleep on their floor. At one point they let me just come and sleep on their floor. At one point my mum came and slept with me. Like, we tried it all. They were completely desperate and unsure how to kind of manage this, but I felt really unsafe. And I live like 2 houses down the road, or up the road, from my primary school, and even walking to school was like a scary thing. And I feel like at 10, when my friends are going out and having sleepovers and walking to the dairy after school, I was like living such a different life. But in order to kind of manage my anxiety, I started checking under my bed before I went to sleep. So like checking for the monster, as kids do, but I was checking for kind of like the burglar or the the murderer. And very quickly my checks, as I so innocently called them, became more and more. So I'd check under my bed, my cupboards, my doors. Then I started getting my parents to check outside my house, and then they said they weren't going to do that anymore because it was enabling. And before I knew it, I was engaging in kind of rituals because they gave me some peace from the anxiety. Long story short, these became more and more ingrained, and I was eventually diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. I had an obsession with numbers, so I would do everything kind of like an even number of times, 2s, 4s, and like reading a page in a book 4 times is an absolute pain in the ass. And the thing with OCD is that logically, and you can ask anyone with OCD, that logically your fear of, if you don't read that page 4 times, you're going to get killed, is actually not true. It's so strong that you just give into that to get that moment of relief from that anxiety. And we know, we as people who have had OCD know that it doesn't make sense, but when that fear is so strong, you just give into it. And so as you give into it, more rituals begin. And for me, over a period of time, the way I see it is that I was really out of control. I had no control over my life. I was about 12, 13 now. I hadn't since I was 10, and I wanted to get some control from something. So I started exercising more, eating less. So I started controlling my food intake, and this is when things really got quite bad. It was January 22nd, 2010, and I want to say I was 14, nearly turning 15. I can't have been nearly turning 15. My birthday's in September. I was 14, 15. It's all a bit blurred right now. And I was admitted to Starship Children's Hospital, medically unstable with anorexia nervosa. I was a kid that loved food. I remember saying to my parents one day, I could never have an eating disorder. I love food too much. And it's actually so much more than about food. But that was kind of when I hit rock bottom, I would say. And it was also kind of a massive turning point in my life and began kind of my road to recovery, I guess.
What was it that you were running away from to stop you from eating?
It wasn't so much that I was running away from something. I felt like I was gaining control by not eating. So because I didn't have any control over my mind, and I didn't feel like I had any control over my body, I felt like if I controlled what I was putting in my body and my food intake, that was one thing I could control. That's kind of the way I see it.
It's interesting because with my mental illness, I use discipline and I use control to stop mine within reason. You know what I mean? So I have my routines. I get up in the morning, but they're controlled routines. I can't give up food. I'm sorry. So, but they're very controlled routines. So there's a spectrum there, isn't there? There's the type that you can use. There is the control that you can use for keeping yourself from overthinking, and then there's your example where you're using it to try and control something of a different sense.
Completely. And I think I think, completely what you just said. But for me, I think very quickly I came to understand that I actually wasn't in control of this anymore. That I had an illness that was taking complete control. And as much as I thought I was controlling what I put in my mouth, if you'd put a burger in front of me, Jen, couldn't have done it because I had this illness that was so loud, you know.
What does it feel like in your mind?
Oh, it's an interesting question. What does it feel like in my mind? It's almost like, and I don't want to talk about like hearing voices because I didn't necessarily hear voices, but it was almost like I heard thoughts or I saw thoughts, or it almost just became part of me, which is really hard when you're fighting mental illness because it's so important to separate the individual and the illness. But when you feel like you're all mashed in together, it's hard to do that for yourself. But for me, I think the best way I could describe it is having like 100 people talking to me at once and just not being able to kind of take in what's being said. And then with the OCD, it was just kind of that constant, it was like a broken record, you know, it was just constantly on replay.
For me, the way I describe it is it's kind of like someone's pouring concrete into your head and you just cannot escape it. It's just constantly pouring in. And no matter how many times people tell you, make yourself feel happy. It's like, good fucking luck. You know, it doesn't work like that because you just cannot escape it. The only thing you can do is try and start routines that will help you to focus on something else besides what's going on.
Completely. And it's interesting you talk about routines because that became, I like to have routines now, and I've become a very organised person, not overly obsessively at all, but having structure and routine was a crucial part of my recovery. Because it was so easy to wake up feeling completely overwhelmed if I had nothing on that day. But if I'd kind of structured some things into my day, whether it was just like listen to my favourite song or, you know, it gave me some sense of purpose and some drive.
What songs do you listen to when you're trying to escape?
I hate being asked about my music taste because it's shocking. My sister would kill me right now. My sister's really into music. Myself, I like just put on the top 40. It's really bad.
Right,
and just listen to whatever's on. I listen to the radio.
Yeah.
I listen to The Edge all the time, on the radio all the time. And just kind of, I had a playlist when I was not well that I'd listen to. The Climb by Miley Cyrus was a big one for me. And also Survivor by Destiny's Child. They were two, I actually had lyrics printed out that I'd look at when I was having a crappy moment. And so, the music I listen to now, I love music, but it's not I'm not like,
not your bag.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not like, I listen to this and this. I just, whatever's on, I'll listen to it.
Yeah. What other routines do you have? Like, give me, obviously, actually, here's the question. Have you ever had, or do you have currently a 9-to-5 job?
So I have a 9-to-3 job on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday.
So fairly sporadic.
Yes.
Really?
And it can change. I'm very flexible if something comes up. So I don't have a day-to-day job, but pretend I had a 9-to-5 Monday, Wednesday, Friday. On a Tuesday, Thursday, it is crucial for me to have not like a strict schedule that I have to kind of like this happens then, but I have to know what's happening that day. And in saying that, like I knew I was coming here at 1:10, I was a bit late, and then I know I've got to be at class at 3:30, 4, and I knew that this morning I had an appointment at the hospital, a meeting at the hospital, and so like I make sure my days are. I like being busy and I like keeping my days full. And I guess a big learning curve for me over the last little while has been learning to just rest and breathe and be okay with not having anything on. Because I like to be busy. But even on the days that I am working and I finish at 3:00, I often, have stuff on after school. I
asked that question because I don't have a 9-to-5 job, and I never really have. Right. I've always been freelance, right? You work in film and TV and you just... work comes in when it comes in. So there's a lot of downtime, and when we do work, it could be 16, 18-hour days. It's nuts sometimes. So it's very all over the place. So I try to have strict routine in my life. So I get up in the morning, go to the gym, go to the same coffee shop, have the same coffee. And then I sit down and I will, on my iPad, and just send emails and all that sort of stuff. Try and get all that stuff done before 8:00, 9:00.
Awesome.
And even though... Because the rest of my day, who knows? I have no idea. But I've done that part. And with depression, when I was going through it, early morning was the worst. Getting out of bed, that's the hardest part. I went through periods of months where it was just like not wanting to get out of bed at all and just staying in bed for ages. Right. And then I decided to make those changes. And that was brilliant. You know, I couldn't have asked for more. And I've managed to stay away from the pills. Have you, did you require medication?
I did. So I was on medication. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but for me, it was, I don't want to say like a last resort, but it was encouraged. Well, not even encouraged, but the option was given, and I was willing to try anything that could possibly help. And I think personally for me, it has been great. So I don't have an issue with medication.
I think there's nothing wrong with medication. I think there's always, you can look at it as a last resort, and there's always instances where you're going to need it. But if you need that boost, if you're so dark, if you're so on a spot, you just need that little bit of a pickup so you can carry on with the rest of it. You know?
Right. Yeah, I get that. And then, I mean, in saying that with depression as well, there's and other illnesses, there's a whole chemical imbalance. And so for some people, it's really hard to, get that back up. And so the medication does support that. And so again, I'm for me personally, I think it's such a case by case and such a personal choice.
Totally.
But like you said with the routine, you have stuff done by 9 o'clock, and I think, which is awesome. And as well as that, for me, as long as I do something during the day, and like you feel like you've accomplished something, because like you said, getting out of bed's so hard. And so if you haven't done something during your day, you feel like you've just kind of wasted it,
Yeah.
So that's awesome.
With the Voices of Hope?
Yeah.
Of Hope. Okay, for some reason.
Oh, no, people call us Voices for Hope.
Voices of Hope. Voices of Hope.
Yeah.
Is it just depression or all mental illnesses that you guys look at?
Yeah, so it's all mental illnesses. And in saying all mental illnesses, there's only me and Jazz, so we aren't able to cover every single one at this stage. We've really focused on our own individual stories. So Jazz, depression, me, eating disorder, OCD, anxiety. Those have kind of been our focuses because they're our own stories, and that's how it started. It started with us sharing our stories and then people sharing their own. But I mean, there's so much I'm interested in. We have a lot of people coming to us that want to hear more about borderline personality disorder and bipolar disorder. A big thing for me over the last kind of even like month has been, I've been working with supporting a few people that have been in hospital with eating disorders, and the lack of care for that is just awful. And I really, even more over the last month, have felt this real need to use my voice and my my position at Voices of Hope or whatever, my connections to really make a difference in that specific field, because that's what I'm passionate about. But no, like short answer is we deal with everything.
We deal with everything.
Yeah.
Cool. I was going to say something about something. What literature do you read to get you through?
To get me through?
Well, not to get you through, but what literature have you read that sort of changed your angle, that sort of helped take you out of where you were?
Right. So for me, in terms of literature, I mean, this is a bit of a broad thing. I love quotes, and so it's not necessarily reading a book, but quotes and music for me, and just lyrics was a huge thing in terms of reading written format stuff to help me get out. I really love like self-help books. I had a really awesome book. Our friends do a thing called Awesome Inc., and they're these gratitude journals, and so it was stuff like that. Reading, they've got beautiful pages in them that you can read, and so I've never been a massive reader, but probably more since becoming well, or getting to where I am today, I've enjoyed reading different research papers that have been sent to me or I found online, more self-help books, more books on different illnesses. I just know I'm kind of fascinated by it.
Audiobooks help?
I haven't done a lot of audiobook listening or reading, which I need to do. Like podcasts, I've started getting into that more. The first one was Serial.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So I listened to that, which is a bit ironic since I was afraid of murderers when I was little, but who isn't? So yeah, that was a good one. But yeah, I don't know why I haven't thought of that. I should listen to more books.
I started doing that because I'm not a big reader either.
Yeah.
In fact, I can kind of say that I haven't really read a full book in my life.
Yeah.
But
You've tried.
I've tried. I'm dyslexic, you see.
Okay.
So there's a genuine sort of thing there, which is funny because I do voice acting, so it's
and
like
you're reading scripts and stuff. But
it's pretty hard. It's always been a struggle, but
yeah.
I remember the first time I ever did one of my very first voice gigs was for Fisher & Paykel Healthcare. It was like a healthcare product thing.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, yes, I'll get in and do it. And they're like, oh, it's a manual. You have to read the manual. And I'm like, oh that's sweet.
No.
Send me through the script the night before so I can read through as much of it as I can, memorize it to a degree, and you'll be right. Never got sent it. I arrived, it's like this thick
inch,
and I'm just like...
And manual's like
It's like proper, and it's words like sleep apnea and all these technical jargon words, and I was just like,
no.
Oh God, please.
No.
4 or 5 hours later.
Yeah, you managed to do it though, didn't you?
Yeah, almost put me off doing it forever.
Yeah,
but
interesting.
It didn't.
You.
But no, so as a dyslexic, it was like haven't read a lot of books, but I found audio books, and I started, like you, a few of those kind of self-help books and that sort of thing. I'm just sort of chopping through Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules to Life at the moment. That's really good.
You have to tell me about that afterwards and I'll write that down.
That's a good
12 Rules to Life.
12 Rules for Life. That's really good. And it just, that was actually one of the books that sort of helped me through quite a bit. I heard him on Joe Rogan's podcast and it was really, really good. So you just, it's just getting that information and where you get that information from.
And it's so different for everyone as well. I mean, I know people, you will too, that love to read, and then others that love to watch things, and others that like to, draw things. Everyone's got such a different way to take things in. I guess at Voices of Hope, we try and get as many as possible by doing, speaking at events and doing talks, and then also creating video content, and then creating, written content, and we'll just try and get as many people in as possible.
So you guys collaborate quite a lot with experts in the fields? Yes. Because I do know a few, I won't mention any names, but there are a few other charity organisations and people who are just going around talking on behalf of themselves.
Right.
We haven't spoken about that person, No. So they're sort of going around, and some of their stuff, as positive as it is, talking about their experience, and that's a great thing. You should get out there and you should be able to share that and try and share how you fixed your situation or resolved it. There's still a lot that they're saying that isn't necessarily safe because it doesn't come from an expert point of view.
Completely.
You know what I mean? So I understand someone's passion for why they're doing what they do and how they do it, but you need to surround yourself, especially mental illness. There's so many different types, there's so many different spectrums. You need to get specialists and they'll be able to deal with that. So you guys work with other people?
We do, and I think from the beginning we've been, me and Jazz aren't specialists, we're not clinicians, and because we're literally dealing with people's lives, we have to be so careful because we are dealing with people's lives. And so it's been really important for us to, we've got a few people that we can run. We often run our video ideas off professionals. We've got supervisors that look after us to make sure that we're dealing with things correctly at our events. So we held events last year and it was all pretty much a panel of us and me and Jazz talking from the lived experience. So people that have experienced it. And on our panel, we had a clinician. So there was the professional voice, and we also had, what are they called, counsellors from 1737 at the event, so that if anything came up for anyone, they could talk to these counsellors. So it's been a really massive thing, almost like a risk management in a way, but also we feel like it's really important because our advice, we're not saying it's a be-all and end-all. I think it needs to be supporting the medical and clinical advice. And my first thing is always just go talk to your GP. And if we get messages from people that are really distressed, we make it clear that they need to talk to a professional. Yeah. You guys are a sounding board. Yes. You guys are starting it off. You guys are the way for some of these people some of these specialists and stuff who don't know how to get themselves out there. Yes. You're an avenue. Right. To get that stuff through. That is awesome. Thank you. You guys are doing so well. Thank you.
So what's next coming up for you guys?
Oh, big question. So me personally, I, again, like I said, I am really interested in the eating disorder aspect of things because that is my story. I haven't actually told anyone yet, but I'll tell you, with a friend come August, starting support groups for those with eating disorders and carers of those with eating disorders. I hope she doesn't kill me for saying that. It should be fine. Sorry, Billy. But, that's something I'm really passionate about, and working with like-minded individuals and organisations in that kind of sector in New Zealand. In terms of Voices of Hope, we've got a few really cool video ideas that we want to get out. We've got some bigger collaborations coming up, speaking events. There's a lot of exciting things coming that I can't really talk about quite yet, but it's me and Jazz, and we create the workload, and we're really passionate and want to do as much as we can while being sensible. So try and get involved as much as we can, and do as much as we can, I guess. That was a really blasé answer.
You got there in the end. You got there. Well played.
We're doing this, and this.
And this.
But I can't tell you any
of it. We're kind of doing some things.
We're doing this,
Very good. So let's go back to talking about the eating disorders for a moment. What other advice do you have about said illness?
Yeah. So in terms of advice, you mean to someone who's struggling? Yeah. So, I mean, eating disorders are very, although you have anorexia and you have bulimia and there's a lot of different binge purge, whatever it might be, you have a lot of different illnesses, a lot of different types of eating disorders. And I can only speak from my own experience. But personally, with my experience, a huge part of my recovery was learning how anxiety works, and that when a plate of food is put down in front of you, when the one thing you don't want to do is eat, you actually have to eat. And each time you eat, it becomes easier and easier and easier. Like with OCD, each time I didn't engage in a ritual, as scary as that was for the moment, it became easier and easier, and I became stronger. I think it's such a difficult illness because it's so misunderstood. From the minute we're born, or even before we're born, food and nutrition is a huge part of our life. And I think a lot of people look at people who have had eating disorders as selfish. And there was moments where I was like, there's kids starving in Africa and I won't put that piece of chocolate in my mouth. What's wrong with me?
That pisses me off when people bring up the selfish thing.
Yeah,
it's like, I know. You don't.
And it's like with suicide as well. Selfish is often chucked around.
Oh, someone said that to me once, and I went off at them. Yeah. I was like, you have no idea what's going on inside their head
at all. And I think it's one of those things with suicide in particular. If you can get to the point where that seems like the only option, you must be in such a dark place. And to call someone selfish is it's so unhelpful. It's so not true. And it's unfortunate that there's so much sympathy, and I felt the same with my struggle. There's so much sympathy towards physical illness, but the minute you tell someone that you had a mental illness, it's like, it's almost like you did it to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it was your fault. And I felt that a lot, and I think that's where a lot of the shame came from, that I felt like I'd made this happen to me and let my family down, and that I could have just picked up the piece of bread and eat it if I wanted to. And I understand it's really hard to understand, to understand, but it's a really complicated illness. And I think anyone out there that is fighting it, it's important to know that you don't have to have those awful thoughts, and that you can build a healthy relationship with food again, and that it is possible to get through that.
I think the world's actually heading in the right direction when it comes to knowledge about mental illness and the awareness of it. I think it's good. I think suicide is still something that isn't necessarily wanted to be brought up too much in we talk about mental illness more than we do about suicide, until it happens, and then we talk about it for a day, and then we try to the media seems to sort of divert a little bit from it, which I think is a bit of an issue. I understand it. It's not exactly the cheeriest thing to talk about, but that is kind of a shame.
It is. And one of the things that really bugs me, and I've learned a lot more about suicide and depression since this journey at Voices of Hope, but when someone dies by suicide or takes their own life, and it says in a newspaper article, died suddenly, you don't die suddenly from suicide. You've got underlying issues that haven't been resolved. You've got a lot going on, and it almost just kind of brushes over the fact that this is a real serious problem, because you're not suddenly dying.
I read it when Pua died. There was an article in the paper talking about they didn't undisclosed why he died, and at the end they talked about suicide helpline.
Oh, and that's the only way. Someone asked us the other day, how did we know that was a suicide before it was talked about? Because they will have an article that says nothing to do with that. They'll say unsuspicious circumstance or died suddenly, and then they'll have the helplines at the bottom. And I don't know. I know there's the whole thing about copycat, and maybe they're not allowed to disclose how it happened until they have the coroner's report. I don't know, but I just feel like
I don't think necessarily that ever needs to come up how someone did it, but I mean...
No, and the method definitely not. Yeah. But I think it's to avoid the fact that you died by suicide when you've got, or died with mental health or mental illness, because of mental health or mental illness, and then to have all the helplines at the bottom, it's just it's confusing.
I think when anybody does that, though, if they did bring it, if they were more open about the way they talked about it, people would, for a moment, talk very seriously and look at everyone around them for a moment really seriously. Yeah. I remember when, and it's silly because it's normally famous people that, when you hear about their stories, like when Robin Williams did it, for example, that was like, I'm a wee bit older than you are, but he was like my childhood. And you look at it and it's like, what's going on? And then for weeks, my mates and I were just looking at each other and talking to each other about it and that sort of thing, which I think it's great, because when he did it, it was very openly talked about for a moment. About it. So it needs to be more. It's still too taboo.
Completely, and it's awful that it takes something as as horrible as that to open the conversation between groups of friends and individuals and communities and whatnot. So yeah, I completely agree. It's definitely better than it was in terms of awareness, especially around suicide. I still feel that there's not a whole lot of that around other mental illnesses. Depression has a really great light shone on. Is shun a word? Shone, whatever, you know what I'm saying, on it now. And there's still a long way to go, but I hope the same can happen to other, or just mental illness in general, maybe, and all the forgotten ones.
The world at the moment is quite confusing.
Deep, yes.
Let's just go wide, very wide. No, but the world at the moment, there's a lot of spitting at each other, yelling at each other, all that sort of stuff. You've got social media, which has come along. Seems to be, in my mind, someone who was brought up with absolutely no social media, not even computers, really. I sound so old.
So old.
I'm not that old. So I saw the transition.
Yeah.
You know, and seeing the transition and then seeing the increase in suicide rate and the increase in depression. And this isn't just about, we're now more aware of it. No. This is actually, these are people there's more things that are triggering it. What are your thoughts on, social media and the way that we communicate?
Big question. I think, I definitely think social media has played a part in our mental illness or mental health increase. I think it can be, we use it in a really positive light, but I think it can be used in a really, or often is used in a really fake and unhelpful light. I think there's a lot of, if we're looking at like something like, I can't speak.
You can do it, get it out.
If we're looking at something like Instagram, there's a lot of time for comparison, and there's a lot of kind of highlights and fake life on there, I guess, that people spend their time comparing themselves to.
Version.
Oh my goodness, it's an edited version, a show reel, a highlight, whatever you want to call it. It's the best moments of their life, and I think that can be really dangerous in a way, because we look at someone's profile and we go, oh my gosh, their life is perfect, but we have no idea if they are depressed, or if they were crying 10 seconds ago, or if their dog just died, or whatever it might be. It's such a small percentage of someone's life, yet we as people are so invested in that.
Also, what we're doing when you look at other people's Instagram pages, you're comparing the worst parts of your life with the best parts of someone else's.
Yes, such a good point.
So that's what that's the table
point.
that you're looking at.
Yeah, completely. And I just think, I think in terms of social media, it's so easy. My mum had this rule: whenever I was angry and sending an email to someone, I had to wait 24 hours. And often after the 24 hours, I'd be like, okay, just breathe. Like, this is sleep, it's unnecessary. But if you have a thought, a comment, if you want to say something hurtful, whatever, you've got that immediate platform to go out there and do it. Keyboard warriors, you can hide behind a screen and say this, that, and the next thing. And it affects people more than we actually know. And especially with bullying, you get bullied at school, you come home, but you can still be being bullied because people online have access to you.
You can't escape it.
You can't escape it.
And even when you're saying things like, you put things online, and I'm sure you're like me, you're a little bit more stable of mind when it comes to that sort of thing.
I'd like to think so.
You like to think so. And you're putting stuff up, and then you get these people who just want to attack it. They just want to attack anything, and they'll take something that you say, whether it's to do with politics, whether it's to do with anything, and they'll just jump on.
Right.
No matter how even-keeled your comments are, people will always jump on something and try and pull it out of context. And that is a very tricky thing to try and deal with. I've had to deal with that a few times. It's awful.
And I'm sure, people are welcome to their own opinions. Everyone has, their voice and whatever. But I think it's very easy to forget how harmful words can be. And I think there are ways that we can go about situations like that in a much more, I was going to say much more better way, but that's not really great English, is it? But you know what I mean? We can go about it in a better way where we're still getting our point across, but not attacking the individual, or, agree to disagree, and it's all that sort of stuff.
It's okay to breathe if you're offended.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If you're offended by something, breathe.
Yeah.
Take a second. 30 seconds.
Go for a walk outside. Yeah.
You know what it's like when you're in a relationship, for example, and you're having an argument with the significant other, and you just it's so easy to send a text or to say something, it's like, oh, I'm angry, I'm going to say something right now, and that's never going to help anything
at all. It makes it 10 times worse, and often you'll look back and you'll go, why did I do that? And again, if you'd waited 10 minutes or just taken a second to breathe,
have a coffee,
you probably would have moved on from that, and or had time to actually process it in a healthier, better way.
What other things do you think are happening in the world at the moment that's sort of driving some of the stuff?
Well, I think in New Zealand, we've got really high domestic violence,
yes,
domestic abuse rates, and I think that's not helpful, it's awful, but I think that's that plays its role. I'm a big believer that social media is a really big one. I think there's a lack of resources available. There's this whole, we've had cases where, you go to the hospital or you have a friend or an individual, someone that contacts Voices of Hope saying they're going to kill themselves, and we contact Crisis or we get them to the ED, but until they've actually done something, they're not taken into care, or they're put in the psych ward for a night and then they're released. And it's like, just because they've been here a night doesn't mean they're not suicidal. And it comes down to the lack of resources. And I think there's so many people out there wanting help but aren't able to access the right help, or there's not enough help available. I think also for men, there's still a big stigma around it. We did a men's campaign about a year ago, and from talking to the guys, there was a lot of, because we just wanted to gather some ideas. We're two young girls. I have no idea what goes on in a guy's brain, but it was interesting.
Not a lot.
No, they were very, they were good. But it was, complicated, that's the word. Yeah. No, but they made the point that, rugby culture is a big, and especially in New Zealand, we've grown up as a sporting culture. Rugby is a huge thing, and you've got that tough thing. There's that whole thing about boys don't cry. Some of them talked about how their parents said, don't be a wuss, and it's just, how we've been brought up in some ways. And so it's about adjusting that.
Restructuring the way.
And also knowing and letting our men know, and everyone in general know, that it's actually okay to ask for help, and that you're not less of a man because you do it.
No. If anything, I would say that you're more of a man if you're able to have the confidence to be able to talk.
Completely.
If you have the confidence to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think the same thing can go for women, except for us, it's that for women, it's independence.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Independence is good, and we should all be independent and all that sort of thing, and we should be striving for it. However, sometimes it's worn too much as a badge of honor, and they withdraw themselves from sharing anything because they think they're going to lose some sort of independence.
Right.
And it's a similar thing for men. Like men, it's that macho thing. We withdraw ourselves behind a veil of masculinity, and that stops us from expressing.
Yeah.
I think we all need to just drop that shit and just talk. And it's okay to talk.
Yeah.
And don't yell at one another, you're right, you're wrong. Just say, you're right, you're wrong, you're right, I'm right, I'm right. And then just sort of come in the middle somewhere and just chat.
Yeah.
Have a word.
And I think that's the thing. It's about finding and creating environments where you can have these discussions. And it doesn't need to be sit down across the table from each other and go, so tell me about your life. What's going on? Are you sad? Are you having... Yeah. But, they can be really casual conversations. And I try and do it more with my friends. When I ask them about their week, I really do ask them about their week. I had
it's not obligatory.
Yeah, completely. And I remember going into a cafe about a year ago now. Seems like a lot of things happened a year ago, but that's because I can't remember how long ago it was. But I walked into a cafe. A year ago. 12 months, And I sat down at a table, I had lots of work to do. So I was like in my zone, and this old man came and sat next to me. And I was like, there are literally like 30 seats around. Why are you sitting here? I didn't say that to him. And usually I'm very friendly, but he started talking to me. He was like, hey, how are you? Good morning, how are you? And I was like, I'm good, thank you. Didn't even ask him how he was. Rude now that I look back on it. But then he paused for a second. He said, why are you good? And at first I was like, who are you? And then I was like, actually, he's someone that genuinely wants to know who I am. And I've just brushed off this moment to have an actual genuine discussion with him. And 10 minutes later, we were talking about his, job as a principal at a high school down south, and this, that, and the next thing. And that could have made his day, but it actually made my day.
Yeah. Even though you felt like a bit of a dick for putting him off.
Oh my, you have no idea. I was like, sorry. He was cute and old.
So rude. I've had friends like that though. They ask you, how are you? And I'm like, I'm good. Oh. No. How are you?
See, and that freaks people out.
Yeah.
But I still do it. I walk down the corridor. Oh, morning. How are you? Good. Oh, I'm good. Thanks. How are you? Yeah. And then I'm like, actually, this is the perfect, and obviously it's not always a time, but it's almost ruder to ask if you're not actually genuinely listening.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. But I also think, no, there is a nice acknowledging somebody, just acknowledging someone's presence. Right. Yeah, that's you're not necessarily acknowledging. You're not necessarily giving a shit. Yeah. But you're acknowledging they're alive, and that is something.
That's powerful. Actually, I haven't thought about that before.
Yeah, no, that one's on me, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I'll quote you. But you are right, and I think for a lot of people, just knowing that someone cares and that someone sees them is a huge thing. Yeah.
So you're right. Yeah. I mean, there is a sort of obligatory way that we do it, and it's just like hi. But at the same time, it is nice to make sure somebody isn't invisible.
Right.
So you can still say hello. But I do get that when you're sitting you're doing something and you're busy and someone comes up to you and they start talking and you're just dude,
I know. There was so much room around as well, but then, it ended up being a positive thing.
It's kind of creepy, kind of nice.
Yeah, exactly. How are you? How are you really? And I was like, what do you mean?
Why? Do I look wrong? Yeah. What's wrong with me?
Am I stressed? Yes. Can you tell? I don't know.
So how's your communication with people now? Like, what has changed? What have been the big changes that you have consciously tried to do to make sure that you make people around you comfortable?
I feel like I'm a much more open person than I perhaps was beforehand. I think I learned that throughout my journey, that asking for help is not a sign of weakness. Yeah. I'm very lucky to have a really close-knit, supportive family. My mum, dad, sister, dog's great. But if I'm feeling overwhelmed or I'm feeling stressed, instead of trying to deal with that alone, I share the burden or share it with someone else, and it does lessen the load. And so that's been a big thing for me. Another huge thing has been prioritizing. I hate saying no to people. I want to be involved in this, that, and the next thing, but I get so involved and feel like I have to do everything to the point that I'm overwhelmed. And so for me, it's really been about prioritizing and looking at what is actually necessary and important and what can wait. Love a good list, and you don't, it feels so good just ticking something off and having it complete and done. And so again, that comes down to prioritizing what needs to be done right now, what can wait till tomorrow. It really does seem to help me. And like you said, having structure is really important. And I still often, I'm a very well person, but I have my days where I'm feeling a bit anxious, and just drawing on the tools that I had or learned throughout my time has been so helpful. And a big part of that is learning that anxiety passes. And so you just have to sit with that, and there's no point in, necessarily trying to face it head on. But if you sit with that feeling, then it is going to pass.
I think that feeling is also, I think we need to feel that feeling.
Yeah.
To a degree. You can't escape it. And I think we try to take things it's like when you get injured, right? When you're playing sport. You get injured, you take anti-inflammatories to try and kill the pain, and you carry on playing. But really, you're just doing yourself more damage. Yeah. Sometimes you've just got to feel that pain. You've got to understand that pain. It's coming to an understanding with it.
Yeah,
that actually
completely. And also maybe like a slight acceptance, not accepting that you're going to have this pain forever, but, this is, and knowing that you can get through it as well.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot, and I think I've probably learned a lot more than I realise. I often say to people that as shitty as that time was, I would not change it because I would not be the person I am today. I wouldn't have had the confidence to move away to the States for 2 years. I wouldn't be working with special needs children. Like, I've got a much more wider outlook on life, and I get excited about things that I didn't think I'd ever get excited about. And, I've got dreams and goals, and because I was so close to losing my life, I'm like, it's almost like I've been given a second chance, and I'm going to make the absolute most of it.
Can I ask how close you got to ending it?
So personally, suicide wasn't an issue for me. I had suicide ideation. So because I was so down because of what I was dealing with, I had thoughts of suicide. I never attempted to take my life, but I did have the thoughts. Cool. My experience with near death was the fact that I was so malnourished. So when I was admitted to hospital, I was medically unstable. So my heartbeat was really low. So it was more medical effects from what my mental illness had caused that made me in a not good place.
How physically active are you? How important is the physical side of things?
So interesting question. So for a long time, my relationship with exercise was a mess because it was a big part of my illness. But in terms of physical exercise, it's become a really important part of my life now. Building that relationship in a healthy way, again, I think was quite crucial to my recovery process. I like to be active. I think anyone who works out feels good afterwards. And I feel like my time, whether it's at the gym or at boot camp or wherever I might be, is a time to not only socialize, but is also a time just for me. And it's a time I get to shut off from everything else I'm doing. I'm not at work. I'm not doing Voices of Hope.
It's meditative.
It's me time. Yeah, completely. Yeah. And I think it gives me that sense of like, I don't know, you've done it. And it's, if I wake up and I don't want to do it, I don't do it. But it has become part of my routine, so to say.
Yeah. I did see something on Instagram the other day about it. Was it a boot camp? It was a boot camp?
Yeah, I got a boot camp down, and that's a really fun social thing, and it pushes me. And I think a big thing is I feel strong again, and for so long I exercised, I was so weak in my body, not in And so to feel strong again and be able to lift heavy things and do this, then the next thing is like the best feeling.
Lifting heavy things is awesome.
Yeah. So I'm not that strong, but I'm really strong actually. But.
So you're quite tall. You play netball?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did play netball. So I played netball kind of up until I got sick, I guess.
Yeah.
Pretty much the same height as the hoop. So I was like, well, actually, no, I didn't shoot. I was a defence. I couldn't get the ball in the hoop, which made no sense either. But yes, netball. 6 foot.
6 foot?
Yeah.
That's a good height.
Yeah.
Good height.
Good height.
So you're only 24.
Yes.
Plenty of time to go.
Yes.
What's your hopes? What are your goals? So for Voices of Hope and also for yourself personally.
For Voices of Hope, I hope that Voices of Hope continues to be the inspiring platform it is. I hope that we can continue to create video content and moving, powerful video content. I hope that we can create, real and necessary needed change and awareness around mental illness. These are all things that we've done to a degree, but I'd love to be able to do more of it. I think both for me, Jazz, Voices of Hope personally, we want to be more involved in the actual process of making the changes, and so working with, whether it's government or working with other organisations and actually actioning some things and not just sitting around and waiting for it to happen. And again, collaboration we think is key, and so working with people not only here but in New Zealand and around the world, and building Voices of Hope as a platform, and continuing to use our own stories to do so, I think is really exciting. There's so much I want to do, but ideally, short, long term, I'd love to get a team on board. It's me and Jazz, and we have a couple of people that film for us, but it's a lot of work for 2 people, and it continues to grow. And so being able to have a solid team on board will be awesome. And then it's still voluntary, so being able to make, not that you do it for the money, but if we didn't have to have another job, we could invest more time into it. So
exactly.
That's another thing. And then for me personally in life, I'd love to travel again at some point. I do a bit of modelling, do some acting. I'd love to do more of that. What else? Yeah, really interested in the using my personal story to create change within New Zealand for eating disorders and obsessive compulsive disorder. I don't know, I just want to go to Coachella. I like dream ripping. There's so much I want to do.
I've heard Coachella's not that good, eh?
Yeah, is it? No.
Nah, I mean, it's very corporate. No, wow, this is a segue.
Yeah.
It's a very corporate. Whereas Burning Man is obviously it's two very different
Burning Man
things.
looks crazy.
Oh my God, I want to do that.
It looks crazy.
That'd be sick. I've got mates that do it every other year, and I'm just like...
The amount of dust.
Yeah, I don't understand that. No. I don't know how enjoyable it would be.
No, you actually have to wear a mask, don't you?
I've seen people wearing them. Yeah.
I can't imagine.
Masks and nothing else.
You'd be so dirty.
Yeah, but apparently, I don't know how bullshit this is, but apparently the sand cleans you.
What?
No, this is true. Apparently the sand acts like, I can't say water, that sounds stupid, but there is a cleaning thing to sand. I don't know.
It might, and probably exfoliates you. That's interesting.
I just think people are so high, they think they're getting clean.
Yeah, you're probably right. You're probably right. And the costumes, I feel like there'd be so much pressure going to something like that because everyone just goes 110 million%. If you don't have a cool costume, you may as well go home.
Yeah.
And they're not even maybe they're not even cool costumes. They're the most randomest things ever. But it's a whole experience,
Would you base yourself anywhere else in the world, or would you think this is your calling here?
So
this is New Zealand.
It's interesting. I didn't realise how good New Zealand was until I moved away. And
that was LA though, it's a bit different.
Yeah, I know. And I loved LA, don't get me wrong. But coming back, I was like, the beach is close, it's clean, it's green. But then in saying that, yes, I would love to place myself somewhere overseas for the experience. At this point in time, I don't see myself living anywhere else, in the near future. But I would love to. I mean, Australia is close. I don't really have a massive desire to go live in Australia, but it's an option. I feel like first is just so much I want to travel and then figure it out. I feel like Bali would be real cool, but who knows? I don't even know what I'm doing tomorrow. So,
well, the cool thing is the whole world's so close now.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I mean, a ticket to anywhere else in the world is cheaper than it was so many years ago. It's so easy,
and you can get there in 12 hours or 24 hours or whatever.
And you can communicate someone instantly.
Yeah,
the world is good.
Completely. You don't have to post mail anymore. Although getting mail is really fun.
I haven't had mail and. Oh no, I get mail every day. They're called bills.
Yeah, exactly. That mail's not fun. Yeah, I
got bills.
Someone cares about me.
This is great. Someone cares about how much money I give back to them. Thank you so much. websites and tags and all that sort of stuff, where can people get in contact with you if they want to contact you?
Yes, so our website is thevoicesofhope.org.
Mm-hmm.
Our Facebook is Voices of Hope. Our Instagram is Voices of Hope. Personally, @_ Genevieve, GENEVIEVE _ Mora, MORA. On Instagram, my Facebook's private, so don't add me on there because I won't accept you probably.
No.
But yeah, Instagram's the best place, and I'm really wanting to change my personal platform. For a while, it was just kind of like a photo album of this, that, and the next thing. But I'm really wanting to use the small 2,000 followers I have and the platform I do have to start creating the needed change. So yeah, come give me a follow.
Give you a follow.
Give me a follow.
Everybody give her a follow.
Do it.
Naturally, I'm going to put all the stuff linked down the bottom of
Awesome.
everything.
Awesome. So if they don't, then I'm kidding. It's totally fine.
Jen, thank you so much for coming by. This has been awesome.
Thank you for having me.
And
Pleasure.
Very insightful.
Thank you.
And it's
I'm
awesome.
glad.
And if you ever need someone else to get involved, I'm keen.
Perfect.
Indeed, cool. That'd
Really
be awesome.
cool. Really, really cool.
So
Thanks
thank you
for
very
having
much.
me.
And hopefully, I'd like to do a follow up, obviously. Maybe every other year.
Oh, I might come back. We'll see.
You might come back. Might have a studio.
Yeah, I might.
Who knows?
I'm definitely interested.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. Thank you very much.